we need to unlock the power of sports as Africa's next economic frontier. And we're going to kick off our panel discussions with our first one, which you guys really have a tough task, yeah? Tough questions were asked by Honorable Minister, as well as also what Ms. Claire Kamanzi touched on during her keynote remarks. The first panel is going to be on how do we look as sports as a strategic asset for Africa's growth? And it will be cutting across the different areas, looking at vision, looking at policy as well, and capital. So, one by one, I'm going to be calling and inviting our panelists as well as our moderator to the stage. And I want you to escort them with a warm round of applause as they come forward. Yes? Guys, where's the energy? We're talking about the most vibrant sector. Thank you, thank you. Our first panelist, help me welcome Mamotake Matekane, the Chief Operations Officer at MGC Group. You're welcome. Paulette Fortes Sanchez, Sports and Social Responsibility Expert. You're welcome. Our third panelist, we have Maurice Nduranu, the Chairman, CPF Group. And our last panelist is Frank Murangwa, the Regional Director for Africa, International Congress and Convention Association. Our moderator for this amazing conversation is Nozibusiso Sibia, TV and multimedia journalist with SABC Sports. Let's welcome her to the podium as well.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning, everyone, and good morning to our honorable ministers and everyone who's a stakeholder. Everyone in this room is actually a stakeholder in the sports industry. And all protocol observed, good morning. My name is Nozbusiso Sibia. I am a sports journalist from South Africa. I work for SABC, which is the public broadcaster in South Africa. And I cover women's football across the African continent, as well as para sports. For people who do not know what para sports is sports for athletes who live with disabilities. So the importance for this, for me to cover women's football in Africa, was because Africa is doing really, really well when it comes to women's football. The most expensive player is from Zambia. Her name is Rachel Kundananji. The Kenya under-17 team made their debut last year in the under-17 World Cup. The referee, actually the first African referee, Salima, is from here in Rwanda, who actually worked in the 2022 Men's World Cup. She was the first female officiator from Africa to do that. So I feel that it's very, very important for me to tell those stories. But for now, I need to introduce you to my panel, who I am going to be for. So for this session, we are going to be exploring how sports can be positioned as a co-component of Africa's development. The speakers will examine the role of long-term policy, investment frameworks, and national strategies in unlocking the full economic and social value of sports. They are also going to explain to some of us who are not ministers how policies are implemented, why they are implemented, because we always hear on TV, on radio that the government is implementing a certain policy, and you're just like, okay, what is a policy? How do you get to that decision? So they are going to be explaining that. But for now, they're going to be introducing themselves, starting with Mamo.
Thank you so much, Nozi. Good morning, everyone, honorable ministers, all executives. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here today. My name is Mamotake Matekane from Lesotho and South Africa. I'm a true African. My background is in asset management, it's in project management, infrastructure development projects, consultancy. I'm also an owner of a sports betting company, in fact, multiple sports betting companies. So I think I am qualified to be here talking about sports. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mamo, and you're definitely qualified to be here talking about sports. Our next panelist is Paulette Fortes Sanchez. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yes, it
Who
is correct indeed.
Thank you. Who is going to introduce herself and tell us what she does.
Good morning, Maramutse, right? Is it correct? I'm learning. So I'm Paulette Fortes Sanchez. I'm a CSR and sport expert. I worked across continent for the last 20 years now. I've been working with various organizations in sports, advising on policies, on partnership. And I'm here today to discuss how legacy has a key place to take in all these government and all these policies. And also I would like to discuss more particularly of my experience for the last 13 years in Qatar. Obviously, Qatar held the World Cup, which is the biggest and largest sport event in the world. So there's so many lessons to learn that I think can be applied to Africa. So it's a pleasure to be with you today, a real honor to be in Rwanda. I've been here several times. I just feel like home here. So thank you very much for the invite.
Thank you so much. And our next panelist is Maurice Nduranu, who is going to tell us what he does.
Thank you, Nosy. Good morning, everybody. My name is Maurice Duranu. I will principally wear the hat of chairman of the CPF group, but I'll wear a couple other hats in the education and education finance space for purposes of this conversation. I'm a financial engineer by training, spent a couple of decades in public infrastructure, in the general investment space, in energy, let me call it in investments in this region by long-term local capital pension and otherwise. And I'm also involved with some companies here in Rwanda, so I'm wearing Kenyan investment hat, but also Rwandan for purposes of some of the conversations.
Thank you so much. Then our last panelist is Frank Murangwa, who's also going to explain to us why he is in this panel.
Good morning, all protocols observed. My name is Frank Murangwa, and I'm the Regional Director for International Congress and Convention Association. Previously, I've worked with the government of Rwanda, Rwanda Convention Bureau, and I've been part of the story you've heard in the morning, and I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you so much. So my first question, obviously, as I said, as the public, we usually hear that government is implementing a policy on this. I remember 6 months ago, I heard that the South African government is implementing a policy on women's football, but it doesn't really make sense to the next person why it's implemented, what is it for, how do you come to that decision that this is the pain points, and this is what we're implementing. So, Mome, I want you to please take us through that. Why are policies implemented?
Okay, I think the right question also would be, who are these policies from and were these people actually consulted? So I think governments usually neglect the fact that there's a lot of individuals that are directly impacted by policy. And if there is not enough consultation with the right people, the talent, the people that actually manage sports associations, federations, sports clubs, then we are not doing the right thing in terms of implementing policy. Policy is supposed to be a guideline for either investors or participants in whatever sector to be able to understand the how and why they are doing that specific thing. So what I've realized is that, especially in sports, you will hear that there's a policy that's been implemented and you wonder, did we even know? You find out on the news. And that is what has killed even sports in itself. We find that in terms of government officials, and please do not lash me for this. I'm just stating facts. You'd find that you have people in ministers or officials in different sectors where they have no idea what that industry has to do with. And that is where the first challenges come. So we need to be able to understand what meritocracy means, not just as a foreign body, a foreign idea that we don't understand. The minute a person is qualified to do something, then you'll see by how they action things to say, yeah, now consulting with the right individuals, this person knows exactly what to do. So we find that policies sometimes do not encompass what we need. And I would say also to investors that it's important that they play a part and a role in contributing towards policies, because they will eventually protect their money, they will protect their investment to know that it's doing the right thing and influence policy.
Thank you so much, Mome. So I'm curious, Ms. Paulette, because you've also worked in the implementation of policies. How does it start? As Mome is saying that there are certain people or stakeholders that need to be consulted. How does it start? Who collects the data? Is the data that is collected as well?
Yes, and actually that's something that I was about to address indeed. I mean, we're diving straight into the policy here, but I would like to step back a little bit, because the policy help to guide, but to support as well a strategy and support a vision. So the vision is a starting point. I mean, Rwanda, very blessed country as such, because you have a visionary leader. And thanks to this leader, with his as well the vision that he have of how sport should be, you have then consultation across government, key stakeholders across the country, and this is how the policy will be defined and set as such. So that would be the beginning. Once the policy, I've heard from me just now that policy might be discovered in newspapers or, just a bit randomly. I would suggest then for a policy to be driven and implemented in different communities. It needs to be explained, because the policy is there to guide for sure, but what you need to implement it is a buy-in from all the person that need to avail of it. So in my experience, if we take the experience of Qatar, when a policy is drafted, it's always in consultation. And when the World Cup, for example, policies have been drafted for the World Cup, it was a national drive that we experienced and witnessed there. All the communities were consulted at very early stage. For example, for the infrastructure as well, where the infrastructure will be, the role of this infrastructure, the future of all the stadium was in consultation. It wasn't an afterthought. So what is key in the implementation, a successful implementation of policies is a buy-in, is the engagement of the concerned groups.
Thank you so much for that clarity. So I'm trying to understand, Maurice, and I know you're very, very passionate about infrastructure, and she touched on it when she was talking about how they implemented it in Qatar. I'm trying to understand, why infrastructure is important, but also why are all these other stakeholders need to be consulted first before the implementation of that certain policy?
I think this is not a conversation that we can have in silos, right? Sports ministers by themselves, without involving, say, national treasuries, without involving education ministries. Like, let me give an example from my country of Kenya. Government has been working on rolling out a new education curriculum in public education, and next year we have the first entrance into senior school, that's the last 3 years of high school, who will be under this curriculum. And one of the very interesting things about this new curriculum, allow me to just read this. So kids coming into the last 3 years of high school will be able to pick from STEM, social sciences, or arts and sports sciences. So kids will have a chance to get into sports and recreation, music and dance, theater and film, and fine arts. That means we are also investing in, at that early age, we're giving kids an opportunity to follow their passions and start developing those talents, and not saying that sports is a domain of those who've not been successful in something else. Um, so I think we need everyone at the table, right? So that then we're not, when we get to the infrastructure end, we're involving lots of different folks at the table to think about how do we plan for the long-term investment in infrastructure that's sustainable. For instance, in Kenya, my organization, the CPF Group, was involved in structuring and fundraising for a new sports stadium, and how that was done. The treasury was very involved, and allowed for the ring fencing of certain levies that over the next 15 years will pay off the investors in this new 350 USD million shilling project. So you need everyone at the table. But then again, when you think about that ecosystem, and I think this is Fred's specialty, that will be created from that environment, what are the economic benefits? What are the revenues can then be generated from that ecosystem that can give investors comfort that actually government doesn't have to come out of pocket today for the stadium, but can invite investors to the table and show that this is the whole array of revenues that we can be able to generate from this ecosystem, and which can go towards paying off, paying off those revenues. So I think for me, it's just making sure that we have everyone at the table and we're having long-term sustainable conversations.
Thank you so much. So moving on to you, Frank, since you work in the tourism department, and we know that we talk about policies, but also the most important conversation here is also how using sports to grow the economy of different countries in Africa, right? So as someone who works in the tourism department, and Rwanda has done a lot, like the country is very influential. I've been wanting to visit Rwanda because of Visit Rwanda, right? So how do you, as a stakeholder in the tourism industry, make sure that you use sports as a vehicle to grow the economy of the country?
Thank you so much, Nozi. I think it's we talked about it, Adi, in terms of really what the sports sector contributes economically to our different countries. Let me take you back to 2021. Who remembers 2021 May? COVID time. That was a very challenging period. But that is the time when the first edition of BAL came to Rwanda. And we can't forget that period, because that's when we realized and really recognized the importance of sports in tourism and the driving economies. I remember that very first event we hosted in Rwanda here. The event generated over 5.5 million US dollars in a period of 2 weeks. And that was really COVID period. So that really gave us a sense of what sports can do. And it opened us to understand the multiplier effect it had on our economy. Not only did it really contribute to, to direct, spending in hotels and venues, but agriculture was impacted. Transport was impacted. So when you look at sports, we indeed look at it as a tool for transformation. And that's what is happening today. When you look at the numbers we've had this morning and across the world, that's what sports really bring to our destinations. Look at AFCON. For a number of countries that have hosted the AFCON, Egypt is one of the countries that has really hosted big number of editions. Look at the contribution it has led to that country. So I think it's indeed, it was yesterday, we should have actually embraced and contributed, come together to contribute to, realize the importance of sports. And looking at the multiplier effect and looking at the long-term impact the events leave to our destinations are quite huge. Think about branding of the country. A number of you've seen a number of athletes from our neighboring countries. We know athletes from Kenya, from Ethiopia. You know how, they make us proud when they go out and they, shine. And that's branding. And we can't easily quantify that, but that's the money you would have invested in marketing. So really that's the power of sports, and we get to see it just beyond the economic impact. We also see legacies left behind.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I can actually attest to that because I remember in 2010, I was still very young, but when the World Cup came to South Africa, we all thought we were going to be rich in South Africa, right? Like we told each other, we're like, oh my God, the World Cup is coming, we're going to be rich. And I was like 16, but I was going to be rich. And now moving to you, Momi, what are the barriers that stop or stand in the way when it comes to the implementation of policies?
I think we need to look at things holistically. For example, I will jump to the mice industry. And when you talk about mice, I think everybody knows what that means. So the minute you say...
Sorry, what does it mean?
It's meetings, incentives, conferences, and events.
Thank you so much. As a journalist, you can't say people know what you mean because afterwards they're
I
gonna come to
apologize.
me at lunch and say, what does that mean?
It's not Mickey Mouse. It's So I think we need to think of it holistically. I think Rwanda is a perfect demonstration of how to win in almost everything. And I'm not just saying that.
True, true.
I'm not just saying that because I'm in love with the country, but I'm saying this because it is a good model and demonstration. There is no way you would want to do things in isolation. You can't say, I want to create the best sports industry and not have facilities like this one that we're in right now. Because where else would we have these conversations? And you cannot say you want to create the best sports and not have accommodation. Where are we going to sleep? If you say all teams from 10 different countries, 20 different countries in Africa come to Kigali, where are we going to sleep?
Very true.
So I think it all ties together, and government has to enable even investors, because most of these countries, I'll speak of my country, Lesotho, we've been in a political ICU for a very long time. And it's only now that we feel like we're really emancipated and liberated. And with that, there is more attraction for investment. Lesotho, in terms of its topography, in terms of the landscape, in terms of the environment itself, it's just too beautiful. We have snow, like it just comes. Even in November, it comes. And with the environment that we have, in terms of sports, it builds so much resilience because we are also highly elevated. We are the highest country elevated in Africa, I believe. And that means you can have the highest golf course in Africa. That in itself, it's a beauty. You can have skiing as a sport in Africa because we have snow. So we need to utilize different countries and platforms, but also different stakeholders to build a holistic value chain around systems. So policy should not just say, no one should just wake up and say, oh, we're going to create a policy. It should speak to what is the need, who needs this solution, how are we going to achieve it? And then you build around that, but consult with the right people. I bet you Christian was not the first person to think of such an event, but he was the first one to act and actually do it. So what we pay attention to is the one that acts and actually implements. So policy should be driven that way, and investors are attracted. It's the same as any relationship. No man is attracted to a lady that is just moping around and just, okay, another day will come. Investors are attracted to intentional opportunities.
You have to build it such that it's attractive. When it walks there, you're like, I want to be part of that. And that's part of policy as well, but as well, the kind of environment that is friendly towards an investor to say, your money is safe, your investment is safe, and there's sustainability and there's longevity in you getting profits, but also sustaining the sport or the investment itself. Thank you. Thank you so much. And that is very true, actually, because there was, I don't know what the name of the policy was, but I was part of a sports program growing up, a very horrible player. I can't play sports to save my life, but it taught me confidence and a lot of other things. And a lot of people who benefited from that program are actually very, very successful. But Paulette, I want to know, so the research has been done, the vision is there, the policy is implemented. How do you track? How do you track the progress, if it's working or not?
Yes, so in terms of monitoring.
Yes.
So when it comes to monitoring, again, something that needs to be thought since the start. When a program is in place, when an initiative is in place, we need to understand what the goal is to be achieved and the objectives. So there's several tools out there, obviously, to monitor, the various elements, but it's key. It's key. And I wanted to add one thing as well to what was said here earlier on. In terms of Wanda, when I was invited to join this panel, I found it very interesting because we're talking about different business cases, but the business case of Wanda is one that should be presented to all the countries in Africa. So we have, in my opinion, and can be challenged, obviously, we have 3 leading countries in sport in Africa. Senegal, I'm a bit biased, my roots are there. We have Rwanda and Morocco. These 3 countries, what they achieved over the last few years, amazing, really incredible. And the work of, obviously, the work of the government behind it, the work of key partners, and we should follow through. Now, when it comes to Rwanda again, we're talking here about sport event. FIFA Congress took place here. I saw, in terms of tourism as well, the economic benefit of such event taking place here. We're talking about hotel availability. Well, during FIFA Congress, pretty much all the hotels were booked. It was so hard to find availability, but it was so nicely organized. And we're talking about a small country here, similar to Qatar, small country, but tiny, but mighty as such. Well organized, lots of vision, lots of organization. And so when it comes to policy again, to come back to what you were saying, policies are great. We tend to present them as coming from top to bottom. However, we have some beautiful examples where policies are bringing from the bottom to the top. What we are not discussing at the moment, and I would like to introduce, is the role of the athletes. Governments are key, partners, whether the business or NGOs, community leaders as well are key, but the athlete has such a strong role to play. And we have here today one of a French champion. We have a champion, Clarisse Agbenienou, and she's not only world champion, European champion, so many titles. I think she's the most titled judoka in the world today. So she's there. Amazing lady. But what we need as well to highlight is, thanks to her, policy will change. She's an advocate for motherhood. And thanks to her, during Paris Olympics 24 last summer, mothers were allowed to bring their babies with them. And so motherhood is something that is not discussed enough. I think the sports world is very men-driven. And thanks to athletes like Clarisse, well, motherhood has a place, and we are normalizing the fact that athletes can be mother and can join competition again. So all of that to say that policy can come as well from the field.
Thank you so much. And like you're saying, that is very, very important. I remember the story when we went to Paris last year, because in the sports industry, I'm a journalist, but in the sports industry, as soon as you become a mother, then it's like, okay, thank you, you're done. So having that policy introduced as well was life-changing. But moving to Maurice, actually talking about athletes, I wanted to know, Maurice, as a person who works in investments, because we're talking about economies here, we've got a problem in Africa where we've we've got certain athletes, they making a lot of money, but come retirement or 2 years to retirement, we already know that it's going downhill from there. What can government and public sector do to make sure that these athletes are covered after retirement? Do they have any like policies, like life policies, insurance policies, things like that, that can make sure that they are covered after retirement, or should they get an injury?
Thank you, Nosy. And I think to Paulette's point of, we need to place the athletes and the people at, at the center of these conversations. And we've seen the challenges, especially in my country, where we've had these athletes who will go out and, win medals out there, make a lot of money, but the shelf life, you're probably looking. I don't know what it is for in track and field, but I imagine you're not doing 10 years. So how do you ensure that you are able to have a sustainable life after that? And we've been involved where CPF Group is actually a pension group at heart. We go back almost 100 years. And with Athletics Kenya, we've set up a pension fund for athletes. And we're preaching the gospel of saving for retirement and saving for when you're not actively acting. You're not actively in the field. I know the NBA. If you play in the NBA for 10 years, you're eligible for a pension. So I think from a policy perspective, that's something that that governments should be thinking about. How do we take care of these people? The other people I think I'd like to talk about, going back to the education side, is how do we help train those who are, peripheral to the athletes, right? Those who are, whether it's the hospitality, the sports management, how do we help them finance their education? I'd like to, give a shout out to the country of Rwanda here. I'm chairman of a company here in Rwanda that started off about 5-6 years ago, that is in the tertiary education finance space, and working with partner education institutions. And I know there's someone from Kepler here today, to help finance students who are studying courses that then lead on to employment, and they pay back during their employment. And when you think about whether it's the MICE industry, whether it's, what we're talking about here is a big ecosystem, and we need people in that ecosystem who have been trained, who have the skills to be able to earn a livelihood. So how do we train them? How do we support them? And so kudos to Tudi and Nick Burge and the people at KFC who worked with us. That company that started off here, set up by a South African lady, is now working in Rwanda, in South Africa, in Kenya, in Ghana, and looking to leave the continent. And I think it's a testament to what governments can do to help nurture businesses, and also a challenge to us running businesses that let's not be content to just run a business in our own country, but spread out across the continent.
Thank you so much, Maurice. In South Africa, we had a problem. We still have it. Especially footballers, when they get to the age where they retire, you find that they didn't have any investment, they didn't have anything. And I personally believe that it should also start in grassroots, because I can't be wasting 5,000 rands and then you think I can save 100,000 rands, right? Because when we don't get that education from a very young age, then when you become a big athlete, then you're gonna make the same mistakes. But I wanted to ask Frank, because Rwanda is doing really well. We've been saying it and everyone knows it. When I got an email from Christian that I'm gonna be moderating here, I was like, oh my God, I need to be serious, it's Rwanda. So yeah, you're doing really well. You're doing really well. I wanted to know, what can we as the other African countries take from you? Like, for example, you've got athletes who are doing cycling, you now host championships in cycling. What did you do right when it comes to that, to making sure that you start these events and they're successful?
I think from really the experience of what we've seen in Rwanda, it's having a clear vision. And not only having a clear vision, but to break it down, to policies, to goals, to objectives, so that you're able to measure. And that's what has really worked for Rwanda. We've understood the power and the importance of events industry, and specifically sports events. And the power is in storytelling. Get your data, get your numbers, show your communities the impact, let them get involved from the beginning, let them contribute so that when reporting, they're able to feel they're part of that. And really that's what Rwanda has done, and we've seen that it's possible. Earlier we were talking about the construction of arenas, the BK Arena, the stadium, all these venues. It came from a vision, but that vision didn't just remain there in the air. It was really implementation. But in addition to that, I think you need to, talent is quite important. You may have all this infrastructure, you may have, the supporting environment, but if you don't have the right talent that is going to implement that vision or that policy, it becomes a challenge. So I think the call or the message is really, while you have that vision, you need to ensure that you have the right talent that is going to ensure that that vision is implemented. Another point I would like to stress is the collaboration. You need to work together, both at a national level, at central level, regional level. I think we've seen very good examples of what is happening in East Africa, where the three countries came together to bid for AFCON. I think that is really a true example of how we can all work together and use sports to unite. And we're looking forward to see what that is going to bring to the economies, but we do believe that it is going to be huge. But beyond that, when we have these events, how do we ensure that you take advantage of them? While you hosting your events in your city, add the pre and post experiences. Let people feel your country. Let them taste your culture. Let them visit your wildlife and they experience your food. And that's the additional money that we talk about that comes into the economy. And that's really what Rwanda has done in terms of positioning the destination as a sports destination, but also beyond that, it's looking at the other avenues that will generate money for the country.
Thank you so much. And I think South African government needs to take tips from the Rwandan government, because they tried to do a sponsorship for Tottenham and people were so angry. And I feel like the Rwandan government did a very great job in involving people from the country, because now Visit Rwanda is very big and everyone is excited about it. Thank you so much. So I want to, now we can have a Q&A if we have any questions from the audience.
Thank you. Before the Q&A, it would be very remiss of me, and I would get fired from the country if I don't say this. My Minister of Sports is here, and I don't want him to report me back in the country. Before that, I want to invite everyone, after Maurice gives us money to build the stadium, I want to invite everybody to come and host some events back in Lesotho. I'm already pitching. It's important also, it's important for me to position Lesotho very well. We may be still very young as an economy and in need of facilities that are world-class, like Rwanda has, so that we can host mega sporting events. But it's important, as I said earlier, to mention that it is ideal to actually have training centers, sports training centers in Lesotho because of the high altitude that we have. All our athletes, when they compete internationally, I'm telling you, you would think we are training in high facility training centers. They are training on their own, but they are able to beat the ones that have sponsorships from all these global brands and whatnot. You can imagine when we are empowered with facilities that are proper. Another thing that would be a crime if I didn't say it. I think it's important for governments, for federations, associations, investors to be aware that when you invest in sports, the talent that you are investing in is a human being that goes through challenges, mental challenges, emotional challenges, all these challenges. Putting your money, putting your investment infrastructure for this individual, you have to make sure that this individual is okay to be able to sustain this and the talent as well. If we don't teach them financial literacy, if we don't support them with how to manage themselves as people, then we are killing this industry, the sports industry. But as well, we're killing our businesses because we are feeding into the industry to invest. So that is very, very important. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Lesotho is actually doing great work in women's football. There's Kick for Life. They actually started to tackle the epidemic of HIV and AIDS, but they ended up building a women's football team and they did their first continental tournament, and that was very exciting. So, yes, does anyone have questions for my panel? They've got all the answers. No questions.
Good morning. Let me just observe all the protocols that have been given, especially for our honorable ministers, but also appreciate the panelists for the wonderful job that has been done. I think they have not received a well-deserving round of applause, and I think we owe that to them. My name is Sombwa Msonsa. I'm the CEO of the National Sports Council of Zambia. I'm here with the Director of Sport in the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Arts. And I appreciate this conversation that we are having regarding policy because it's one of the key issues that we need to discuss when it comes to sport being a catalyst for for national development, but also for the development of the African continent. And I'm grateful that you have also highlighted quite a number of issues around the drivers of having good policies that can result in real impact in terms of social and economic development. Issues around policies being consultative is key, not just us who are seated here, but the athletes. And a good example that we have here in terms of athletes that are the primary beneficiaries of sport, but also the policies that we implement. There is also another issue that has to do with the policies being research-based. It's not about copy and paste, especially elements that are coming from the Western world. I'm not saying the elements coming from the Western world in terms of our policies are not key in terms of informing our policies, but I think our policies should be based on the African context. And it's not, like I said, about copy and paste. But also another issue that you have highlighted is aligning our policies to national policies and strategies, but also our development plans. Sports policies cannot work in isolation and must be connected to other development plans, including global sports, the global sports movement. But there's one key issue that stands as a barrier in terms of having successful implementation of our policies. We have very good policies, and I think we owe it to our ministers, but also our national leaders that have supported us in terms of making sure that we draft policies on sport. But there is a big issue that we are facing in most African countries, which is the difference between a policy that we draft and its implementation. And one issue that we are facing is the human capital. I'm not saying we don't have qualified human resource in most of the African countries that can be able to implement these policies and effectively do so. But most of the qualified personnel are sitting on the fences. And in some cases, they're sidelined in terms of being consulted or being involved in terms of drafting these policies. And what we have in some of the countries are people sitting in strategic positions in the ministries of sport and other related agencies that are not qualified in terms of sport management. Now, when you look at other sectors of development, if I'm going to the Ministry of Finance, a person that is qualified in sport, like myself, cannot sit in a strategic position and make decisions in the Ministry of Finance. Could be the same in the Ministry of Agriculture, in the Ministry of Health, where they require someone that is involved in drafting of policies that is qualified in that field. However, in the sports sector, it's different because anyone that can voice out and speak about sport can sit in a strategic position and draft policies. But that's where now wrong things start happening. Because the person who is sitting in that strategic position and is involved in drafting sports policies is not qualified to do so. And so what is needed, and I'm happy that we have got our leaders here and always providing us with a listening eye and ear, is that we need to improve in terms of engaging the right human capital when it comes to policy drafting, but also implementation of the same. And I feel that if we implement all the strategies that we have correctly with the right human resource, Africa will find itself at the top in terms of sport development. And all the statistics that have been given can be doubled, can be tripled with the right human resource. So my point was just to complement the good points that have already been highlighted by the good panelists and say that we can do it as Africans, and like was presented by one of the presenters, why not if we can? Thank you so much.
Nosy, we have two other hands. Would it be okay if we also give them a chance?
Yes,
That's fine.
it'll be,
Okay, we
yes.
have one here, and we also have one, I think, on the extreme side. Maybe we can start with that side, and then we'll end with this one.
Thank you. My name is Freddy Muya from the land of the brave. It's from Namibia. A round of applause for Namibia. Why I'm saying Namibia, I'm also here to brand Namibia before I give my comment. Lucky enough, my deputy minister is here. When we arrived, we were told this is a beautiful, country, and the town is so beautiful. Indeed, it's number one in Africa in terms of the cleanness, but Namibia Windhoek is number 2. But also I can add in terms of the road infrastructure, we are number 1 in Africa. So you are number 2 here. Thank you. Mine was just a comment. I think my brother here from Zambia, we work together. It seems he have done plagiarism on the same point that he raised. But I will just also emphasize on that same point, the aspect of, it's a comment, yes, consultations when it comes to policies by the end users. It's very, very critical. I think I'm not going to dilute very much because indeed there's a need for consultation, especially with the end users. I'll cite a very good example. You end up constructing a facility in your country meant for a given sport federation or a sport code, but you don't consult that sport code for in terms of the requirements. It have happened in many countries. I'll use example athletics. You end up constructing a facility with 7 lanes. Not knowing the international standard, you need 9 lanes. What are you going to do later on? You have actually wasted resources. So it's very, very good that consultation plays a very important role. There was one good comment that came from the panelists. I'm very much happy about this comment. It talks much about the welfare of the athletes. We know athletes retire depends on the various sports codes, age 34, age 38, and 39. I think it's very good that we have got policymakers here. With me, lucky enough, I also came with my board chair lady here. Lucky enough, we are from program implementation and my colleague. But I know my deputy minister, part of the policymakers, the aspect of athlete funds, retirement packages. I can assure you, it's very much disheartening in many countries that you see people that were cherishing, that were celebrating when they're winning medals at the Olympics or Paralympic Games. But come they reach 40 or they reach 45, they are the same people now that will be begging in the streets. I think as policymakers, there's something that we need to do because we know sports is a very short, career. As much as the athletes themselves, they need to be groomed from the early age to ensure that they can do savings. But we need to know even ourselves who are working today, from academia and from professional lines. We are not even saving currently now. We are just waiting for that package that we are going to get when you go for retirement. So I think it's very, very critical. I remember in Namibia, 4 years ago, we wanted to start with this project, but have died. I believe with my deputy minister in here, he will call me to his office very soon that we need to revise this project that it can go forward. Last but not least, it was an aspect, it's a comment that you also mentioned about you cannot produce elite athletes if you don't have the right facilities. It's correct. I think there's a need for investment in Africa. As much as we talked about that percentage of 0. I think we talk about contributed GDP of it's 0.2. Is it? I know we're talking about 0.5 for Africa. Is it? The other part of the world is around about 2%. I think as African countries, there's a need for us also to invest into infrastructures because it's already mentioned, we cannot be able to produce good athletes and also be able to ensure that this industry grows if we do not invest in infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Musa Rukidi Tevendana from Uganda. I'm the head marketing and communication Uganda Police Football Club from the prestigious Uganda Premier League. About policy, Madam Sanchez spotted out the very core and important heft of how we can go about policies from bottom to top, okay? And in most cases, we're ignoring the most or the core important people who are the athletes. So the challenge we find in all aspects or disciplines of football of sport is the ignorance of the athletes onto what they have on the table of sports. They are very strong people out there, okay? But they hold the biggest, stake in all this. We have not empowered them in so many ways. What I could tell you, one, for starters, if we have not taken the initiative to educate these athletes from the bottom, the challenges we're going to face, one, we've had cases of African players who go abroad, okay? They're not lettered, they're not learned. They sign contracts, they sign agreements with different agents and football managers, okay? And then their money or their hold is taken by, unscrupulous people, okay? Because they are not learned. And that is really has been a challenge over the years. So let us try to empower these people from the beginning, okay? As Africa, we are putting a lot of initiative in education and sport, upbringing, but we have to go ahead and, give a chance to everybody to attend this education that will help them to improve their lives. Two, after football, life after football, or after any other sport, I could give you an example. Many associations and federations are not taking into consideration the athletes. I could give an example in Uganda. We have what we call the Football Federation has tried to take a course of trying to educate the former players, okay, about football. I could give an example. The Olympic Committee is taking initiative to give courses to former athletes, runners and divers and everything. So these people feel part of the team, feel part of the development of the sport in that country, okay? And it helps them, bid a good farewell to their success. However, if we ignore them, we do not give them that chance to participate, okay? You find them at gates, you find them moving all over, asking for help from the different federations after they've gotten sick, after they've had career damaging incidences, okay? So we need to empower them, okay, through this education about the sport. If someone has been a runner, tell them to go through the process. What happens after, what can they do in the running section? What can they do in the footballing section? What can they do in the shooting, games? You give them that chance to professionalize their sports that they have been doing and be able to help others. in that way. So I believe if we come together as a team, as Africa, to help the athletes be involved physically, emotionally, and financially, we shall be able to achieve. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to ask for a parting shot from our panelists.
Okay, thank you so much, Nozi. Before that, I just wanted to answer to the comment that was made earlier about policy and technocrats sitting in offices but not doing anything about policy or not knowing. I earlier spoke about meritocracy. We have people in positions, critical, strategic positions, who have owned those positions and don't want to leave. We have federations that are killing talent because they have turned those federations into lifetime careers. They don't want to leave. And they have politicized these positions, and that's what we need to fix. And I think I don't speak only for my country or for South Africa, I speak for many, many countries. I'll make a quick example of a story that's in the public domain of SAFA, the South African Football Association. You have executives that are earning millions when the coach is earning 50,000 rands. And this is the coach of a national team. So these are examples, practical examples of how associations and federations kill the sporting industry. That's where we need to start. We need to uproot all the rot, put it aside, and then fix this thing. And if we continue to enable them and allow them to continue, we are killing what we are sitting here discussing. So that's where we need to start. And we need government, policymakers to say, okay, I'm dismantling this, I'm starting over. You have the power to do that. There, we are actually hoping for government to stand up and say that for us. And also investors, you have a voice. If you're gonna invest in a country, say, I've done my research, I understand that this is where there is stifling in terms of talent growth and development. This is what needs to happen, and then I'll put my money down. If we don't do that, you have to bully people into doing the right thing. Okay, now parting shots. Thank you. So first of all, I want to thank SportsBiz. We did a tour a couple of months ago to Saudi, to Qatar, talking about the importance of this day, the importance of investment in sports, the importance of understanding why sports is business. And today we are realizing exactly that. What I love about SportsBiz, about Rwanda events is that, and about Rwanda itself, they don't just speak and you don't sit in conferences. The reason why I rarely go to any conferences but only come to Rwanda conferences is because after that you see results. You cannot waste your time. You left your kids, you left everybody at home that you love. You come to a conference and we're just chatting and chatting, but nothing happens. I love Rwanda events and SportsBiz because they act. So if you leave here and you have not transformed this conversation into something tangible, it's your fault. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mome.
Great, thank you. I wanted as well to respond to the question from the gentleman around policy and youth. Athlete obviously needs to be part, as we discussed, need to be part of all this policy making. And also when it comes to the education and the journey of the athlete and football more particularly, there is a way to address it. I mean, it exists already in some country. When you take sport and take education together, and that obviously can come as well from the government, when you bring these two domains hand in hand, they can create wonder. So, and when you tackle as well, when you go all the way to grassroots, when the young population has access to sport and access to education, access to guidance and advice, how to grow to become an athlete, but also how to grow not to be an athlete. Because we know that in this world, I mean, in football, for example, maybe 1% of the footballers are professional today. So we need to think of the 99% of all these children as well who would have tried and fail, if you want, in the technicality of football. But however, there is opportunity for them out there. So when the gentleman mentioned that we have talent in Africa, which is true, talent is being exported to other continents, mainly Europe at the moment. All these athletes needs to be trained and need to be accompanied to understand that there is football, yes, but if for any reason, and it can happen very easily, a hurt or wrong selection, a coach that is not supporting you and you stay on the bench, well, if that fails, there are other opportunities. And I mean, I'm mentioning that as well. I'm from a football family. My dad was a coach. 2 of my cousins were professional footballers as well. And the time that you spend as a professional footballer is so short. You need to think very quickly as to what would be your life after football. And so that can be a company, and that I think should be as well the responsibility of all the academies, all the federation, to ensure that the footballers understand that, and it applies to all the sport, that there is another way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And just and to close as well, on my side, just like you, similarly, we talk a lot during conferences, but we need to put it into action indeed. And so implementation is key. And I hope that all together we can move forward and create some solution that would be successful.
Don't worry, you're talking in Rwanda, they're action driven. And then Maurice, and then Frank, please, your parting shot, and then.
Thank you. I'd like to just challenge us on 2 issues. We talk a lot about we need investments, but investments come from savings. So as African countries, we need to increase our savings rates, personal saving rates, national saving rates. So we have the adequate finances to then invest in the infrastructure that we need and in the things that we need to do to actually improve our the outcomes for our citizens. So increase our savings rate. 2 is the benefits of good governance. We have a lot of senior government officials here, public officials. I think our colleague from Zambia has expressed the concern about human capital. We're in a country that's not afraid to bring in foreigners to serve in government institutions, whether at executive level or at a board level. So the false notions we have of sovereignty as Africans, that government invests in a facility like KICC, but the president's relative needs to set up a company to manage the facility, and we can't give it to the right partner that can actually derive value from that facility. So these false notions of how we do things, that we can only have our people serving on boards, we can only have our people running things. We are not going to go anywhere until we can, separate sovereignty from actually bringing the right people on board to help us get to where we need to get. So let's invest in good governance.
Frank, your parting shot?
My parting shots will be on believing in yourself. I think I really would like to commend the Rwanda events in believing in themselves, really by giving us the platform we have. This is the 2nd edition, but looking back from really the thoughts and the ideas of developing homegrown events, this is what we talked about. And we're seeing it in reality, attending the 2nd edition. So I would say, believe in yourself, believe in Africa, and believe in sports events. They are a powerful engine for economic development.
Thank you so much to my panel, and thank you so much to you all for listening. Thank you.